It's cool that we're all here because we were all here last time together too, so we can kind of like pick up where we left off. We talked last time about dissociation and sort of the reason for having this practice on Wednesday nights. Kim and I's motivation for it partly is just to be able to reassociate, like come back into our bodies after, a year and a half of escapism, and for many of us, lifetime of escapism in some ways. So I've been kind of thinking about dissociation. Most of the time when I think about it from a very personal, individual perspective, like the ways I'm dissociating from my life or the ways people around me, I notice them dissociating. And I'm starting to kind of think about the ways that we do this collectively, like the way, like as a culture, we dissociate, and how that is bolstered and perpetuated by capitalism and white supremacy, and that those things really depend on us not feeling. They depend on us being completely out of our bodies. And in that sense, it feels really radical to practice coming into your body. And I learned of this, someone introduced me to a writer named Sophie Strand. She lives on the East Coast somewhere, I think maybe New York. And she writes a lot about embodiment as it pertains to ecology, and sort of that the earth is an extension of our bodies and how those two things are interrelated. And I thought I might read just like a little snippet of one of her writings. They're pretty long. I'll just read a section of it because it seemed to tie in really nicely with my sort of train of thought as I was thinking about individual dissociation and collective dissociation and how we mend that. The piece is called Agony in the Garden. Can you hear me okay? So this is just a section of it, but she writes, "We have been numb for so long that we no longer understand the body we are harming is an extension of our own body. When we clear-cut a forest or drive another population of birds extinct, we do not somatically register that we are twisting a knife in our own side. Eco-awakening is an emergency, and if it is done right, it is going to be extremely uncomfortable. It is going to be agony. What does it mean to suddenly be able to feel the whole story, the full impact of the accident, every raw spot where the plant, a fungi, a beaver once lived? What song does it make when it plays through your own nervous system? When I finally decided to come back to my body, it was not pleasurable. It was excruciating. It turned out a whole spectrum of emotions were available to me, stored not in my brain, but in my armpit, my toe, my hips, my sternum. But this spectrum was not easily classifiable. It was not a product. It was not a good thing or a bad thing. It was pins and needles. It was a howl, a scream, a holy shit. We need to help each other come back into our bodies. Bodies that have inflicted genocide and ecocide and self-harm. Bodies that have denied their shot arrows have a way of curving back into their own breasts. The bodies that flow beyond the sterile fiction of a self into the ecosystem where concrete blankets the kingdom and Roundup fries the garden. Let us begin to honor that while embodiment is our birthright, so is discomfort. This is not going to be all pleasure. In fact, the birth canal into ecological embodiment is going to be tight and hot and intense. Waking up to the animate everything of this excruciating, wild, bumptious, dying, breathtaking now is going to hurt. But the pain is what tells us to move. I think the real horror of being unable to feel anything at all, good or bad. Looking down at the sleeping foot, one is always worried that you'll never get your sensation back. So when you start to really feel it, the sapphire-sharp sorrow of the butterflies, the rivers, the cavernous boom of whale song ballooning your own moan, you will also give a sigh of relief. To feel is to know you are real, really here, and really bigger than you ever thought you were. To really be awake in the garden, while the disciples of the dominant culture still sleep, is going to be agony. The world was never a machine, never numb. Yes, this will be uncomfortable, but it will also be the blessing of understanding that every sting is a sign you can feel your body again. Your body that is intimately sewn through every other being you breathe, sweat, drink, see, metabolize, become, and die alongside. I read that just after I had been reading Adrienne Marie Brown's Emergent Strategy. I've been kind of like leafing through that book again, and there was a little section of it where she was writing about basically like we need to take turns allowing each other space and time to feel in order to maintain our movements toward liberation and justice and ecological healing. And so I just wanted to like lay that out for class tonight, that it is such an individual thing that we're doing when we show up in spaces like this. It's a personal project to come into this work as an individual, and it's also so interconnected to everything else that we do. So thank you for being here and doing this with me and doing it in community and taking it week by week. And I hope we can kind of let this sentiment lead us through the practice tonight.